All right, poet of theater, the one and only poet of theater, Broadway level diva, and also scholar of the left, girl. And when we get back to my timeline of infiltration, girl, we have gone from like 300 BC. Now we're at 1960. So what we've seen so far is that first, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you, class society is always going to generate dissent and opposition to domination. So that domination has always been monitored by the ruling class through the use of informants and spies, right? And from the Arthashastra all the way through the 1790s, 1800s, and now 1900s, what we've seen is that they always want to entrap us. They want to confuse us, divide us, monitor us, and entrap us. They want to send people in to get us to do things that they can kill us for or arrest us for. They want to get people to pretend they're on our side and have them get to know us. So we're going to continue now because I was just on an Instagram live where I have much more of a following, dear. Check out my Instagram, Poet of Theater 2. And we're on the 60s now. We just saw in the 1950s, they just started going after monitoring sex deviants, homosexuals. So there was the Red Scare in the 50s and the Lavender Scare. Well, we know that the Red Scare part two in the 50s really descended from the first one. Roy Cohn was working for McCarthy, and they were both working with Hoover. Hoover was put into place by A. Mitchell Palmer, who oversaw the first Red Scare in 1919. So get it, comrades. From the 1919, from 1920 to 1950, right? We see that's 30 years. We see socialism, anarchism, communism have not died down, right? The Pinkertons were formed to go after anarchists and labor organizers and Irish nationalists. So this stuff hasn't died down. So now we see these guys always talking about, have you heard about the woke stuff and the woke and there's wokeism? Well, honey, that's the left and it hasn't died down. What they cannot accept is that resistance to the ruling class is a permanent phenomena and that ever since the inception of capitalism, we have been ardently trying to get rid of the bourgeoisie and establish a class free society as the Enlightenment promised us. So, brothers and sisters, let's get on to the 60s. Now, as we get to the 60s, I want to remind you of one more thing about this. In the 1950s, the Red Scare, Roy Cohn was the right hand man of McCarthy. Roy Cohn was then the mentor during the 70s and 80s of Donald J. Trump, right? Our Aryan overload. Roy Cohn was an anti communist. Trump is an anti communist. And Roy Cohn was also a mob lawyer, right? And Trump is big for working with the mob. So we see right now what's going on in America is an anti-communist backlash, right? That's why they don't call it fascism. They hate when we call it fascism. They said, oh, actually, the fascists were socialists, National Socialism. But we see this fascism that's going on right now, where they just now they're killing white women. That is a consistent pattern in America. So that's why you'll hear me on my Instagram, my main account, saying this is not a temporary phenomenon. This is class society. All right, brothers and sisters. We saw in the 50s there was the formation of the School of Americas, and that School of Americas was to stop communism in the left in Central and South America. We saw the U.S. was overthrowing Mossadegh in Iran. And now we see in the 60s, the CIA is helping segregation or apartheid in South Africa. Well, who's the most famous South African we know? The billionaire Elon Musk, who's been controlling much of our government, who grew up and got rich off apartheid. And he's from a family of millionaires. So you understand? I want you to understand, brother and sister, comrades, sisters and sisters and ladies and non-binary siblings. There is nothing new. This is not new. This is a continued process, a succession of bourgeoisie in each generation. John Irvin of the CIA pretends to be a diplomat in South Africa. He tips off authorities about Nelson Mandela's location. Now, seeing that I was growing up in the 1980s, Mandela was called a terrorist, right? In the 60s, the CIA is already monitoring him. So they have him arrested, right? And Irvin claims the CIA official says that he did his part. He basically ratted out Mandela because Mandela was going to incite the Indians, the South African city of Durban. Don't incite the Indians. So this is white supremacy too. They're always afraid of the so-called minorities getting together on anything but the white man's terms. Now we go to 1965. So now we got with the Chicanos, right? FBI begins monitoring and infiltrating Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers movement. So, like, it always comes back to the same thing: labor organizing, organizing for equality, organizing against white supremacy, organizing against colonialism, right? They will shut you down and monitor your every move to break you and to keep you from linking up with too many people. Let's go to the 70s here. We're going to get to my birthday in a minute. So, 1971, US FBI begins monitoring Gay Activist Alliance. So, in 1951, they started monitoring homosexual activists under the title of sexual deviant. And now there's a Gay Activist Alliance. It began with the defense of Sylvia Rivera, famous trans woman, a goddess of our movement, who was charged with sexual solicitation for collecting signatures. So they basically said she was a prostitute for collecting signatures for a piece of LGBTQ legislation to be introduced in New York City Council. So you see, right now they're denying gender affirming care. They want to get rid of trans people, and they just killed this woman. And Fox News emphasized she's a lesbian that they shot in the face, that I shot in the face. So you see the war against queers, right? And that's why we need gender liberation, because this stuff has been going on, right? So this 1970s, we're going after the queers still. And we see 1973, Darthard Perry. Look this motherfucker up. There's an interview with him on YouTube. Darthard Perry, FBI informant, tasked with infiltrating the black community, carries out his orders to burn down the Watts Writers Workshop, a creative writing group formed after the riots in 1965. Darthard Perry, I believe, he talks about how there's FBI agents who are scholars of black culture and black history. They study all the books. They know more about black culture and black history than most black folks, right? Because their job is to manage and infiltrate black communities to stop black people from turning against white supremacy, to keep black people powerless, right? Motherfuckers are reading books on the history and nature of jazz and the history of Pan and black theater and black literature and all this shit. That's the FBI. Okay, so Darthard Perry. Look him up on YouTube. It's a fascinating interview. So this Watts Writers Workshop, well, why would they want to burn it down? It was formed after the riots in 65, right? Because see, again, we understand that it's not because those black folks were necessarily leftists or communists. It's because they were black trying to do some shit to come together as a community to form their own culture that wasn't directed by white supremacy, right? 1978, that they might have been leftists, but it's not the point. The point is they're black folks trying to do shit. 1978, now we're back with the Irish nationalists. We saw in what was it, like 1800? What was the guy? Wickham, the magistrate. He was tasked with monitoring the Fenians. Well, now still over what is this? 170 years later, they're still trying to do everything they can to stop the Irish from having independence. So in the UK, Ian Hurst, former British intelligence agents, claims the IRA member Freddie Scappaticci approached British intelligence to inform IRA. He had become a key member of the IRA's internal security unit. Hurst claims Scappaticci was a double agent. Scappaticci is said to be responsible for at least 18 killings. This was a book, I think it was called Deep Throat or Steak Knife. I read this book a while ago, and it's basically about how the British military intelligence infiltrated the IRA. Very fucking sketchy shit. They did this with the Black Panthers too. They infiltrated the intelligence part of the IRA. So the guys in the IRA, the unit that was responsible for identifying informants, was infiltrated by an informant for British intelligence. And so they were killing these guys, right, on the basis that they were snitching, that they were betraying the Irish cause. But it was actually a British intelligence agent doing it, right? This fucking schizoid shit. And that's the thing about intelligence, is that we talk all this talk about, oh, it's wow, it's like really like they're superheroes and shit. They're just psychotic fucking manipulative fucking monsters, right? So that was a really interesting book, man. That was fucking psychotic. And we see that in the Black Panther movement, what they did was, if you guys watch that Judas and the Black Messiah with Fred Hampton, they show where they had one agent who killed a cop or killed somebody and then was on the run for that killing. So he was taken in by these different, safe houses the Black Panthers had set up. So then he got all the information on those Black Panthers, right? Very slick. Okay. 1979, the year Poet of Theater was born. Why didn't they celebrate? Sons of bitches. Sean O'Callahan rejoins the IRA, this time as a police informer. Later, he says he's lost his faith in James Connolly. So this, I put this in here. First, the thing about Scappaticci we just saw. He got away with 18 killings as a supposedly as a counterintelligence in the IRA. Okay. Another thing, there's this guy, King John T, that fits this profile. You see, with confidential informants, sometimes they're pushed into being informants because they've broken the law and they're avoiding jail time. Sometimes they volunteer, right? In this case, we saw earlier, I believe in the 1800s, there was an Irish guy who went to basically the loyalist government and turned himself in because he felt bad. Well, so now you have the confidential informants who are avoiding jail time by working for the cops or working for the FBI. Well, a lot of times because they did bad shit, like this case I talked about, Vance Lee Jones, who's still active and most likely still assaulting people in the Long Beach poetry scene, and he was charged on three separate counts of sexual misconduct with minors, including statutory rape, and served no jail time, even though he pled guilty. And so you have people like that who seem to they use their status as a confidential informant to get away with more crimes. Whitey Bulger is another case. You can look that up. He was working for the mob. He was an informant, and so he can get away with killing anybody he wanted, so everybody was scared of him. So we have this idea, well, it's a gangster. He's killing people like Suge Knight, right? Well, most likely it's because they're informants. When I was doing tenant organizing, there was a potential leader that I found, a woman who was really going through it, a single mother. She was the apartment manager and right by where I used to live in Long Beach too, in Cambodia town. She told me that she was being coerced into sex by her neighbor who said that he was a confidential informant and could get away with everything. And I asked around some people I knew who talked to some former law enforcement individuals to look this guy up as a favor, and all I was told was stay the fuck away from him. He's fucking dangerous. That's all I was told. So confidential informants are fucking common as fuck. Anyways. That's the IRA, guys. Now we're in the 1980s. This was the first Make America Great Again time. This was Ronald Reagan, right? The last Trump. So this was a rollback of union rights. This is a rollback of black power, a rollback of feminism, and greed is good. The 1980s, right? So in the U.S., Ray Barton, informant, goes undercover. The Communist Workers' Party helps two members and one sympathizer plan to pipe bomb electrical transformers, providing the NASCO shipyard with power. Once again, we saw that quote from 1900. The police sergeant said to an anarchist, "We will provoke you to acts of terror, and then we will crush you." All right, we're going to see time and time again. They provoke us to do illegal things, and then they crush us. We just saw there was an incident with somebody burning the flag, which I'm not opposed to at all. I don't care, burn the fucking flag. But it was at protest in Minneapolis after Nicole Good was murdered by the ICE motherfucker. And the guy went out and he burned American flag, and then he just took off and he wouldn't answer any questions. And it seemed like he was an undercover cop. So, yes, it's still going on today and it's going to keep going on because we forget how limited the bourgeoisie is. They are not that clever. We confuse their lack of morality, their lack of humanity with cleverness, right? It's like if you have somebody that sees you as their property, right? A slave master, and you're gonna think, well, the slave master is really tricky. No, he's just a fucking monster. Like Jeffrey Dahmer was good at getting away with killing people and eating them and shit. Okay, so 83 to 88. Oh, 1988, this is a long one. Bob Lambert, yes, serving under the Special Demonstration Squad What does that mean? Special demonstration squad, right, to infiltrate protesters. He poses as an animal rights activist to infiltrate activist groups in the UK. He fathers a child with one activist. He wins a $425,000 or pound settlement from the Metropolitan Police Service. Okay. Oh no, the person who he fathered a child with. Yeah. So this is another thing. A lot of these guys are womanizers. A lot of these men. There's a guy I suspect I might talk about later who I worked with in Long Beach. They use women and manipulate women because women do most of the work in society in holding relationships together. Women do 99% of the work in organizing. Activists, revolutionaries, women do most of the work. So if you're a man and you're, handsome and you can lie and manipulate and play on women's emotions, build up their self-esteem, make them think there's something special, make them think they're special to you, have sex with them. You can manipulate women, and then you can basically, how do you say, compartmentalize, keep them isolated from each other. And when one of them speaks out, you already have relationships with everybody else where you can turn them against the person who speaks out. I've seen that too. So this guy, Bob Lambert, he started a relationship with this woman as an undercover person. You imagine how fucking psychotic that is. Hey, baby, I love you, da da da. Like I said, homie, all of the proper propaganda on Netflix, Hulu, homie, is telling us, and he's buff, bro. He's got special training, and and he's somebody tries to rob him, then he's gonna kill him. And really, these are fucking psychotic Jeffrey Dahmer, Silence of the Lamb motherfuckers. In the 80s and 90s, the UFI, the FBI, girl, I've had too much coffee. They're monitoring Mandela and the ANC. We just saw in 1970s, so 1970s, 1980s, and 90s, man, they had a hard on for Mandela. And now we remember Mandela as a great leader, a peaceful leader, right? And da da da. But the ANC believed in terrorism, and you understand that at the same time the ANC was fighting back, they called it terrorism. What they mean is direct action, right? Violence against the oppressor. The IRA was engaging in this shit too when the ANC was in the PLO in Palestine. And if you listen to the Black Panther, Ashante Alston, the anarchist panther, he talks about the IRA and the PLO and the Black Panthers and the ANC, all of these guys trying to network to some extent to form a united front against white supremacy and a bourgeois regime. So you guys don't remember in the 80s, ANC, they were terrorists, right? And so they were monitoring Mandela, the African National Congress, and of course, groups like the CPUSA, which we saw in the 50s, was already infiltrated with the FBI. So in the 1990s, the FBI sends informant to spy on Mandela during his first visit to the U.S., right? They love Mandela. So 1999, you guys, it was 1998 or 99. That's the battle in Seattle. That's another upsurge of the left. So the 80s was all a pushback of the left. Then starting in the 90s, we had this conscious hip hop music, a lot of Black Power activism. 92, we had what some people call the LA riots or what other people call the LA Rising, right? Where all the black folks they'd been talking about police brutality for how many fucking years, and then everybody saw Rodney King getting beat to fucking death on goddamn live TV, on the news. It was the first time before the internet, right? And we saw this shit happening in real time, and so there was no more denying it. And so with from that and then 1999, there was a huge upsurge of anarchists, revolutionaries. So then in the 2000s, they had to crack down again, and we're gonna see. Okay, three in the U.S., 3 men infiltrate a group of activists making puppets to protest the Republican National Convention. The group's warehouse is raided on the first day of the convention. So these guys went in there and they're egging everybody on. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And again, they're just setting you up to do something illegal, right? So always be careful of somebody, especially men as men. Always be careful on somebody who makes us feel uncomfortable, makes us feel pressured, especially to show how revolutionary we are. Anybody who's saying, "Are you really down, Holmes? Are you down for La Causa? Are you down for the cause?" The Bakunin, Marx would have done this. Man, if Lenin was here, he would pick up a Glock right now, motherfucker. Like, fuck those fools, all right? So, 2001, Quebec, there's a Summit of Americas. They were protesting there. There was the Germinal Affair, Canadian military in RC, that's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, urged a group of activists to make bombs and provided the materials. Girl, how many times are we going to see this, honey? It's a bit redundant by now. 2001 in Italy, Black Bloc on a Friday and the following day ransack a neighborhood in Genoa. Among other destruction, the Black Bloc activists used crowbars. Luigi Marabarba, Italian Communist MP, says that during the riots he saw German and French people in the police station holding crowbars. Well, when everybody's doing the black bloc, you can't tell who's who, so it's easy to get informants in on those occasions too. And property destruction is something that's debated within anarchist circles and within leftist circles. I'm not entirely for or against it, but just understand that is one thing that cops always fucking try to provoke and will do. If we don't do it, they'll do it. All right, we're gonna end. We'll end at 2010 just to make it an even number. 2002, 2012, another interesting case. Christian Højbo. Højbo. I used to teach Norwegian kids. I can never get this right. Højbo. Okay. He was working for the Norwegian Federal Security Agency, so that's like their FBI, the Politiets Sikkerhetstjeneste. They infiltrated the International Socialists and the anarchist group Blitz. He made copies of the membership list, subscription list, argued for physical confrontations with the police, and was arrested for making Molotov cocktails. So we saw back in, what was it, 1850, 1860, whatever, there was or 1880s, there was a private detective who infiltrated the Union and did the same thing. There was Stieber, the spy master for Bismarck, who did the same thing with Marx. Went into his house to get the membership lists of the Communist League, and then they were like executed or whatever the fuck. So that's another thing they're trying to do is get information, find out who's in your group. So always be careful when you meet somebody that says they're down for your cause and they're asking questions about all this specific information. Always be careful, always deflect. You don't have to say, I'm not going to answer that. You can change the subject. You can be kind of mean girl about it, but don't give out information to anybody who asks it because they're always trying to get your information. Okay. So the International Socialists, in a public statement, claimed to have evidence that the PST replaced Hoibo with another agent so that infiltration remains ongoing. So during his infiltration, he likely reported on the British Socialist Workers' Party conference, which he attended in the UK, as well as protest he attended in Germany and Denmark. So 10 years. 10 years. He was infiltrating for 10 years. So there's another thing. This is what I realize about Occupy and about some of the groups I've worked with and some of the people I've seen. Well, a lot of these guys are fucking 10-year feds. They're 10-year FBI agents that I've worked with and known, right? And they present themselves as the most radical of radical. Here we go. Mark, UK in Europe, 2003 now. Mark Kennedy, working under the National Public Order Intelligence, infiltrated the environmental movement. This was another thing that they were calling domestic terrorism, was environmentalists. Working for the police of 22 countries, girl, committing arson for the German police, and allegedly encouraging protesters to attack police in Dublin during the May Day 2004 protest. Kennedy, while undercover, manipulated multiple women into having sex with him. During a trial of 6 activists charged with conspiracy to commit aggravated trespass into the Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station, he admitted to his role as an informant, and the case was dismissed. Again, using women, right? Basically, you want to call that sexual assault? If a man pretends to be somebody else and like intentionally seduces you into sex on false premises to get information and to cause harm to you and your comrades, right? And then provoking them to trespass, right? Provoking them to crimes. One of the defendants in this case, Danny Chivers, said Kennedy played the role of agent provocateur in this case. Of course. During his time as a police officer, he set up a company, Tokra Limited, at the same address of a security firm working for the company that owns Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station. That's the other thing is these cops, they're brash, right? So he set up a company, and the company was at the address of a security firm. So that basically means the company was the security firm, or he was running the company out of there, that security firm, and the security firm uh, that owns the power station. So shady shit. And that's why, brothers and sisters, it's important to think of ourselves like getting to know a friend. When you want to get to know a friend, you want to know where they're from, what makes them tick, what is the details about their life, right? What sign are they, right? What do they like and dislike? So you can fill in the whole personality. So it's not just, I'm a communist, you're a communist. Well, I'm da da da. No, girl, because that's what they use against us. Personas, roles, cosplay, right? So you want to get to know people, know where they get their money, know where they're from, know what their parents do for a living. You don't have to interrogate anybody, right? Don't make it hostile, don't make it awkward, but over a cup of coffee, over a cigarette, smoke some weed, you know what I'm saying? Get to know people. So 2005 Domestic Security Alliance Council forms, private public partnership between corporations, FBI, and Homeland Security. So it's interesting because 2005 was all about the war on terror, right? But what they weren't talking about was that they were also very much aware that there was an upsurge of the left, not just the anti-war movement, but if you ever go back on the Wayback Machine, put in infoshop.org and look at one of the mirrors or whatever from that site in 2005, and you'll see how much anarchist activism there was. And there was Trotskyist and socialism. There was para-economics. There was so many leftist movements going on at that time. So, at this time, what they're doing is they're coordinating, right? This group will later come up and occupy Wall Street, which we're going to get to in our next series. Okay, we're going to end right here, girl. It's a lot, girl. See how it escalates with the complexity and sophistication of bourgeois society. You see that the infiltration of the population and the suppression of the rebellion, the suppression of dissent and resistance to that ruling class becomes equally sophisticated. Now we see AI. Well, now AI is monitoring us, right? We have drones. Well, now drones are monitoring us, right? Let's finish it up here, girl. 2007, Toronto, we're in Canada. Quebec provincial police, disguised as anarchists, tried to provoke a fight between protesters and riot police. During protest of meeting between U.S. and Mexican presidents, Canadian Prime Minister. At this time, there was all these trade agreements going on, right? That's what the 1998 battle in Seattle was about, and there was a NAFTA and GATT and all this stuff, and it was basically to compete with China and to basically decimate the working class of Mexico, right? So again, I just saw this, one of these right-wing websites or accounts on Instagram. They posted something about a clash between activists, and that'll get us all arguing with each other. But how do we know that's activists, right? It's very likely that cops go in there and get us to fight each other. Here we go. This is a good one. All right, 2008. We're gonna finish with the 2008. Anna, an FBI informant, arranges meetings between environmental activists, provides encouragement and bomb making. Girl, it's so tiresome. Bomb making instructions to group of activists who are later arrested for this plan. The intended target is the Nimbus Dam in California. Leftists are not talking about bombing dams, right? So isn't it interesting? The FBI comes up with these ideas, and well, okay, we read Marx and we read Bakunin, we read Lenin, and we read Franz Fanon, and what is should we make them do? How can we? Let's have them blow up the Empire State Building. Let's have them start a Death Star, right? That's what they want. That's what our a talk about organizing the masses against the bourgeoisie. That's what it becomes in their mind, right? So, anyways, okay, last one. Oh, this guy is going to become famous. Brandon Darby informs on activists preparing to protest GOP conventions, facilitating the arrest of McKay and Crowder, who are alleged to have planned to make bombs to throw at state vehicles. In the trial, the accusation is made that Darby instigated the plot. Brandon Darby, girl, we have to look him up, and then I'll show you. We'll see if there's any quotes from this time. Brandon Darby. Breitbart. He's an American blogger for Breitbart, the right wing uh from the right wing website. Here, here's his documentary, 2012, the film Informant. Oh, this documentary about him. So he was identified as infiltrating Occupy Wall Street, I believe, if I remember correctly. Here, let's look at a clip here. Uh, so he became famous. So he was an informant. They always gotta play the victim. Is somebody gonna kill me? Are they, bitch? Okay. After Hurricane Katrina, right? He showed up as an activist. So informants are part of every goddamn activist scene out there, comrades. Do you get what Poda Theater is trying to break down for you? Okay. Let's see quotations. We're gonna see if there's any quotations. And then I'm gonna get off here and try to, I don't know, be with myself. But this is what we see. What I'm saying is, have you ever read any leftists talking about the history of infiltration? That's why I'm doing this. Okay. 1993, one of my favorites here. Oh, 2004. 1993, Martin J. Levitt, Union Buster. Read this book, Confessions of a Union Buster. It's a great book. He says to stop a union proponent, a pusher, the anti-union lexicon. They call it a pusher, whoever's advocating for a union. The union buster will go anywhere, not just to the lunchroom, but into the bedroom, if necessary. The buster not only is a terrorist, he is also a spy. My team and I routinely pry into workers' police records, personnel files, credit histories, medical records, and family lives in search of a weakness that we could use to discredit union activists. Okay. Now, I was kicked out of Long Beach, and a lot of what I saw by the white people who I exposed for abuse of children, their tactics, it seemed like they were consulting with somebody who was using union busting tactics, and I was identified as the organizer, and they did everything they could to isolate me from my community and to, get me to take my own life, all this stuff. Okay. Here's another quote. The enemy, this is Confessions of a Union Buster. Read this book. The enemy was the collective spirit. I got hold of that spirit while it was still a seedling. I poisoned it, choked it, bludgeoned it if I had to. Anything to be sure it would never blossom into a united workforce. Wow. 2004, one of my favorites here. Cosiglia, former Italian prime minister, advising Berlusconi. Quote, they should do what I did when I was interior minister. Pull back police from streets and colleges. Infiltrate the movements with provocateurs ready for anything. And for 10 days, let protesters devastate shops, burn down cars, and set city aflame. Then, emboldened by popular support, police should have no mercy and send them all to the hospital. Not arrest them, because prosecutors would just free them right away, but beat them all and beat the professors that encouraged them. And there was a quote in this, he said the female professors especially. The history of infiltration, brothers and sisters, are you picking up what I'm trying to break down for you as Poda Theater, Master of the Master Race, Arians will obey, Broadway level diva. This is part 7. We're going to finish up here. We got about 2 more in this series. And I'm thinking of doing a follow-up series where I talk about suspected cases of infiltration in my own experience, which I'm afraid to do, to be honest, because the thing about exposing somebody, when I've talked about this, I've been labeled basically as what I would say a crazy bitch. Just like when a woman steps forward and says that she's been assaulted or beaten by a man, her partner, and then I speak out about it, I get labeled as a crazy bitch, just like the women do. So we'll see. Anyways, that is Poda Theater's timeline of infiltration. I want you to understand infiltration is always going to be with us. It's very consistent patterns. It's very obvious. It's not that deep. I love you. Mwah.